Morning. Welcome everybody to the annual conference of the National Association of State Fire Marshals. This is a group of national level heavy hitters from state fire marshals, deputy marshals, training directors. You got people from the national level of fire protection, as well as some leaders on the national level of insurance services. Conference hopefully allow all of us in attendance to go back to our niches in the fire service, better equipped to protect and inform our communities and protect, train, and equip the people in our communities to provide protection at the ground level. Give you some background on me. My name is Curt Raue. I have an experience as a firefighter and an officer in both career and volunteer organizations. Been in the fire service for 16 years. I'm currently a captain with Marshtown Fire Department, a small career department with 27 personnel. In my position, I'm a company officer and a shift commander. In our organization, company officers are used to help the fire marshal with prevention and community risk reduction activities. For this part of my role, I'm required to be certified as an investigator and an inspector. In addition to these requirements, I'm also certified as a youth fire setter interventionist, as well as a level 2 instructor, which means I can write my own programs for people within our organization and in the community. Outside of our organization, on the days that I'm not working on shift, I help as a substitute teacher in the local school district. This role gives me a great opportunity to have more contact with youth and influential adults in the community. Also allows me to inject nuggets of safety and personal awareness into my interactions with those people. I also get the opportunity to observe youth activities, be able to stay informed of trends and fads that may lead to concerns or needs for intervention for my public safety coworkers. Some background on where I work: the city of Marshtown, small city in central Iowa. We got a population of right around 30,000. We're spread out over 20 square miles. Generally a working class community. Main employers in town are a meat packing plant and several manufacturing plants. Also the area around us, the primary activity is agriculture or related to agriculture in some way, shape, or form. The majority of our residents live in standalone single-family residences. However, there's recently been a lot of development in the city with more multiple family dwellings being built. This is in anticipation of significant growth that is projected for the community. Depending on who you talk to, Chamber of Commerce, other community leadership organizations, city council, development groups, they're looking for our population to grow to between 50 and 70,000 people in the next 10 years. So with that growth coming up, we're looking at our work is definitely going to increase. If you look at our call volume over the last 5 years, it's already increased. You can see we've got a steady growth here. One thing to note over here, between 2018 and 2019, we actually cut down the type of calls that we respond to. We stopped responding with the ambulance to care facilities and clinics. That's why you see a slight drop in our call numbers. However, since that happened, they've gone right back up. Another thing that we've seen with this rise in call volume, we're running multiple calls at the same time. One concern with this is it takes all of our resources out of the station. We're running 2 or 3 calls at the same time. We're definitely concerned with that, about being caught on a serious call when we've got all units out on either medical or minor calls. With these vulnerabilities being exposed, our administration is looking at different ways that we can help stretch our resources or cover ourselves. One thing's doing that is we're getting more involved in the community risk reduction concept. Been looking for ways to help the community stay safe and prevent emergencies, to try to cut down on the number of times that we get called out. So with knowing that and knowing where our organization stands in the community risk reduction theater, some of the background on the whole idea of community risk reduction. It's the idea of switching our culture and our way we operate in the fire service from reactive to proactive. Essentially what we want to do is we want to go out, figure out what the problems are in the community, what people are getting hurt with, why they're calling us for help, and figure out ways and strategies and techniques that we can use to inform them and help them keep themselves safe, prevent these emergencies from happening in the first place. Ben Franklin, regularly recognized as being one of the founders of organized fire protection in America, has a quote: an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Essentially means the more you inform yourself, the more you learn, the better off you are going to be down the road, and you'll be able to protect yourself a lot better. Getting into the community risk reduction process. So our messages in the fire service as far as risk reduction and prevention have generally been limited to fire prevention at the very basic levels. Often we just target age groups of grade school age children, and our messages are tailored to their level. They're very basic, they're often cartoonish, and there's simple concepts of taking care of yourself at home. To truly evolve our programs into community risk reduction as opposed to basic fire protection, our target audiences are going to have to expand. We're going to have to be able to address the whole community. And we're going to have to break it up. We're not going to be able to build one large blanket program to cover everybody. We're going to have to tailor messages specifically to different groups and what problems are affecting those groups. Obviously, in our modern world, we're developing as fast as we ever have. Increasing presence of technology can't be ignored. Personal devices and social media kind of rule the day. We also, as a society as a whole, we place a lot more emphasis on education than we used to. The days of just graduating high school and slipping right into a blue-collar job kind of seem to go away. Now we pretty much view as everybody needs to have some sort of college, some sort of higher learning. One issue with this, both with the organized higher learning and the amount of extra learning that people do constantly between their personal devices and what they look up on social media, this information can be skewed depending on where they get it from. That makes it even harder to be able to communicate with these groups, because you have to have you can't give people just straight information anymore. You have to be able to tailor to the groups that they identify with and towards the other types of media that they follow. The evolution of evolution and develop of our society being reliant on personal devices. We've got a society now that expects instant results and feedback. We've also got people that, while they expect this instant feedback and results, they want to get this feedback while experiencing as little impact on their lives as possible and giving as small of a commitment as possible. This is all stuff that we've got to keep in mind when we start tailoring our community risk reduction messages. And these are challenges that we're going to face. Our role as a fire service is going to have to change to be able to fully involve ourselves in the community risk reduction concept. We come from an industry that's traditionally response and task oriented. We're really good at showing up and doing the jobs at a moment's notice. Typically recruit people of action. As we get farther into this community risk reduction venture, we're going to have to look for different skill sets. People are going to have to come in knowing how to communicate. They're going to have to know how to deal with technology. They're going to have to be able to do some assessment and information gathering, while also still being able to go out and do the work on the ground at the same time. In this, we're going to have to change the way that we train and educate people. We're going to put some more emphasis on business and administration type skills, record keeping, data collecting, information processing. We're also going to have to work a lot more on public communication and presentations. The days of having a rough, gruff fireman that shows up are they're pretty much gone. We have to have people now that know how to talk and deal with people. Unfortunately, the transition from traditional fire prevention programs to community risk reduction programs is going to increase the amount of work that gets done locally by our fire departments, by the administration, and the people that work in them. The fire prevention programs that we've relied on for years are generally made at the national level and sent out with very little custom work done regionally and locally. Community risk reduction is not something that can be just a canned presentation can't be sent out from national levels. This is something that individual departments, at least on the state level, if not even tighter than that, are going to have to be able to collect their own data, figure out what their specific problems are, and then create programs and information that are tailored specifically to what problems their communities are facing. It's not something that's easy to copy from a mass-produced program. We're also going to have to, there's also involved with this is there's constant interaction and reassessment with the community. These whatever programs and messages we come up with, they're only going to be relevant for a short amount of time. We're going to have to update them constantly to make sure that they're staying relevant to the audience that we're sending them to. What do our leaders need to do? Leadership for community risk reduction program, it's got a lot of different looks to it. Obviously, administration and company officers, higher level formal leaders in our organizations, they've got a responsibility to build networks and relationships, both within the emergency services and within the community. Their dedication to this is going to determine the success or failure of our community risk reduction programs. By building relationships within emergency services, like with emergency management offices, for example, you're going to be able to open up channels for information and resources that can help everybody in the process get the mission done. Once a department adopts a community risk reduction posture, the entire organization is going to need to embrace and embody the mission. Everyone within the organization is also going to need to understand and accept that community risk reduction in all stages is a process of change. Truly keep people motivated and engaged, the organization has to respect the process, and we're going to have to address it and pitch it to our people from both a prescriptive and a descriptive process. Prescriptive and descriptive focus. Essentially, a prescriptive focus, we're talking about the process. You have to talk about respect and embrace the process. While at the same time, on the descriptive end, we also have to keep the results in mind. What are we going for? Another thing to consider is the financial perspective that community risk reduction has on our operations in our community. Obviously, this part falls on the formal leadership mostly, also with the city government. In our modern world, fire departments and emergency services are not immune to budget cuts and reductions, like so many of us used to believe. Many cities and communities are feeling the pinch of tough times. Councils are governing with a business mindset and look at what departments contribute to the general fund. Fire service leaders who can show that community risk reduction saved operating costs or reduced the financial impact of emergencies on the community may be what saves an organization from catastrophic cuts. Another aspect of leadership for community risk reduction programs is our service being leaders as a whole in the community. We're going to have to set the example. If we truly want the public to be on board with community risk reduction, we're going to have to show them the way. All of us are going to have to be on board. Our mentality, our behavior, and our operations are going to have to reflect the mission of keeping the community safe. Our guidelines and practices are going to have to be developed to embrace and show the public that we truly are committed to reducing risks and emergencies in the community. We're going to have to make sure that our work practices are safe. We're going to have to follow proper driving procedures and techniques, seatbelt usage. We're going to have to make sure we're following the rules for our PPE, when and where we wear it, wearing it all the time. All of our safety equipment is going to have to be in top condition and used properly. Our personnel within the fire department and other emergency services are also going to have to accept that this mission doesn't stop when we're not in uniform. People know who we are and what we do in the community. If you've been in the service for any length of time, you get recognized everywhere you go. If we do not embrace the community risk reduction in our personal lives, the public that looks to us as an example will not embrace it either. Fire safety and property maintenance at home, safe driving and seatbelt use in our personal vehicles, healthy living lifestyle choices, acting smart and looking out for others. all things that we're going to have to do to be able to sell this mission to ourselves, to our organizations, to our citizens, our communities. Be all hands in all the time. But working with the community, motivating groups in the community. We can go out, we can tell people we're putting together a community risk reduction program. And they'll believe us. They'll say it's a good thing. That can't be where it stops. The success of our mission is reliant on building relationships and spurring motivation within our targeted audiences. This means we've got to become part of the community, interacting and networking with different groups within the community. And this means all groups in the community. We have to go out and we have to figure out where the groups are in our community. We have to figure out the risks and concerns and emergencies that are affecting these groups. We've got to interact with them to be able to find out what their concerns are. We've got to build relationships with them for them to trust us when we give them strategies and techniques for preventing these emergencies. If we single out just one or two groups and only focus there, the rest of the community will notice and will not be motivated to participate. Leaving groups out could also lead to people completely dropping their support of our organization. And that means not just buying into or not respecting the community risk reduction program. That means running the risk of having people vote no if we have to go for a bond issue to get a new station, new trucks. Embracing the diversity in our community is essential. Tailoring our message to fit these groups properly is the only way this is going to work. One example is working with churches, support groups, employers, teach groups of refugees and immigrants from developing countries about safe cooking and heating practices, for example. In our community, a lot of these groups of people come in with no experience in cooking with our equipment and hardware that we traditionally find in the Midwest. We run a lot of calls for smoke and burnt food, kitchen fires, when new groups of refugees arrive with little to no information as how to use the resources that they have now. But that's just one example. There's all kinds of other groups that we can work with to figure out the issues that they're having and work with those groups to prevent these emergencies before they happen. As department leaders, we also need to motivate our personnel and public safety educators to be engaged in the program and the mission. First place to start with this is getting back to the core mission of the fire service, in which we are here to serve and protect the community. For several years, the fire service preached that the firefighter is the first priority in the fire protection equation, with their safety and comfort being before all else. The first step to getting our people motivated and engaged in the mission of community risk reduction is to get back to placing the citizens and their safety back at the forefront of our mission. Stressing that it is our duty to train and learn as much as we can so we can go out and be well equipped to give our all to serve our communities will reinforce what our organization actually exists to do. Achieving this cultural shift will help our community risk reduction mission, as well as our mission overall, grow and become part of our people's identity. Community risk reduction is not going to be an easy task. We're going to be faced with lots of challenges. As we talked about before, one of the major challenges is going to be keeping everything up to date. Not only do we have to stay up to date with the technology and the types of communication being used, we've got to stay up to date with the messages that we need to be sending out. We can't create a lesson, a message, tailor something specifically for one group, and then not touch it again for 10 years. Constant reevaluation and reassessment is a must. Not only is this a lot of work, it's also going to toil on the mentality of our people. It can be monotonous work. After all, we hired our people to be firefighters, not bookkeepers, not stat keepers. Making sure that they don't lose focus or motivation is important. Several years of stagnation from our community risk reduction personnel could actually lead to the undoing of all the progress that we've made. Funding and staffing is going to be a constant concern. In growing communities or communities experiencing higher run numbers, department and city leaders may look at the personnel working for community risk reduction roles and see them as a resource to fill in holes where the operations staff isn't filling. On the other side of that, organizations that come on hard times and can't afford to hire more people, or they actually have people cut, community risk reduction staff and resources will most likely be targeted before the operations staff is. As I talked on the last section, keeping our personnel engaged in the operational side of our mission is going to be just as difficult as keeping them engaged in the community risk reduction mission. Once we start really focusing on community risk reduction and talking about keeping the community safe and reducing our responses, it's a possibility that people will start to lose focus on training and educating themselves to be as proficient on their emergency operations as possible. This is part of our operation that is still going to have to stay sharp, because it's unreasonable to expect that we can prevent all emergencies. Emergencies are still going to happen. People are still going to call us for help. When they do, our personnel have to be able to operate. They got to show up. People still expect an expert to come. That's part of our service that can't be allowed to slack throughout this community risk reduction process. So that's my contact information. I'd like to again thank you all for coming to this conference. I hope you can all gain something from it and gain something from this presentation. If you have any questions, comments, places for discussion, I'd be happy to entertain those now. Or if you come up with something later, again, there's my contact information. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody outside here. Thank you very much. Have a good conference.